Mating matters. It's why we do what we do. I'm Dr. Wendy Walsh, a psychologist and relationship guru, and I've got a new podcast that explores the secret evolutionary motivation for human behavior. Mating matters. Listen and subscribe at Apple Podcasts or on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
3, 2, 1. All right, here goes everything. This is something brand new, the News Junkie interviews, and I hope you absolutely love it, or at least deal with it until I work on formulating the best possible product out of this each and every time you get one of these shows. Now, I'm going to try my best to get them out, maybe once every week and a half. Who knows? I don't know, because it's relying on getting the people who are interesting to have a deeper conversation with. And we'll get started in just a minute, but the News Junkie interviews is really for people who want to learn new things. You want to be entertained. You want to stay up to date with what's going on in the world. You're curious. You're intellectually curious people. And that's why I love you. That's why I'm glad you're on this journey with me. And that's why I'm excited for the News Junkie interviews as a project moving forward. So many different things that I have in the works that I can't wait to do this deep dive into. But I hope this will be something extra. For those of you who listen to the show or maybe even subscribe to secret shows, this will be something for you whenever you want to listen to it that you can enjoy and kind of pick up a couple of tidbits each week. That will be the goal here. I've been doing radio for a very long time, but this is something a bit different. And each week we'll talk about a topic, sometimes controversial stuff. The language is going to be a bit much at times, so listener discretion and all that stuff. And the first show that we'll get into in just a bit starts off perfectly along those lines. Challenge your assumptions, think about things, and learn a little bit more each day. And I think most people are into that. That's why a lot of people go to podcasts. That's what you try to get out of them. We are going to have some sponsors as this show rolls on because it is completely and totally free. It is free for those of you who are listening on any podcast platform out there, and it's free for those of you who are listening in the News Junkie app. If you're not, I'd encourage you to do so. Search for The News Junkie in the App Store. But this week, I'll say that the News Junkie interviews is brought to you by Secret Shows, right? Secret Shows. What could be better than Secret Shows to sponsor the first episode? If you love the News Junkie radio show, there is a side show available on the News Junkie app and on a website called GetSecretShows.com. It's an uncensored look behind the scenes. We have fun. We talk about all kinds of messed up stuff. We spill way too much gossip about the radio station, our lives in general, and all points in between, and I think you might just love it. Again, an uncensored show that's released once every week. You can subscribe to audio only if you like. It's just $2.99 a month or $29.99 for the entire year. And video, if you like, a 1080p video that's released with the show each week so you can watch on your big screen and enjoy it that way. It's C-Lane, Josh Pinkman, you may know him as, and a bunch of our best friends just hanging out, enjoying ourselves, and riffing in a way that you can never do on the radio. We have subscribers into the studio. In fact, show 125 is coming up before too long as I'm recording this. And we're going to have people hang out right here. It's at my house in the Secret Shows studio where this whole thing is recorded. It's a blast, and I hope you enjoy it. If you're new, you could check out any show you want. Show 100 for our 100th show anniversary was a pretty fun one that you might want to check. But there's so many in there, and the archives are always available for any subscriber. Secret Shows subscribers not only get the uncensored shows available on the News Junkie app or at GetSecretShows.com, but we'll do you one better. You get big discounts, deep discounts on merch, first access to the News Junkie events, and in the future, early access to this show. There's an update that's going to happen at some point in time, which will restrict new episodes of this for the first 48 hours to just Secret Show subscribers. So when it comes out, you hear about it, And if you're a Secret Show subscriber, boom, you could dive in and listen. You can scroll through the player and see things on the See It Now section of it. And you could do all of that stuff before everybody else. This is all part of what you get from being a Secret Show subscriber. We do live events. We haven't done one in a bit, but there's one coming up soon that we have to get serious about planning. And I hope you'll join the movement and jump on board. So do that now, please. Get the secret shows, the uncensored shows. It's the best way to support the show beyond just listening is at getsecretshows.com. Our topic today for the first episode of the News Junkie Interviews is Michael Jackson innocent?
On this episode of the News Junkie Interviews.
So we're going to talk about this, and I understand that, number one, it's controversial. Number two, some of the content's a little, and it's an area you want to maybe even stay away from. But it's something that is thrust into the zeitgeist in this country right now in a very significant way. Why is that? Well, it all comes down to HBO. And HBO purchased a documentary, a two-part documentary, actually, called Leaving Neverland. And this documentary, likely you've heard about, and Leaving Neverland is something that explores the claims of two guys, Wade Robson, who is a dance teacher, a choreographer, who has had a lot of success because of Michael Jackson, and then ended up going on teaching dance to people like Britney Spears and some of the boy bands of the 2000s and the late 90s, 2000s, I guess, more so. The other person who has accusations that they level towards Michael Jackson in this Leaving Neverland documentary is somebody by the name of James Safechuck. And James Safechuck was a little kid who seemed to be sort of a hesitant actor when he was young, and his parents threw him into this. And he got featured kind of out of the blue in a Michael Jackson Pepsi commercial. I think it was a Pepsi commercial. And he met Michael Jackson that way. And both their families, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, both their families were incredibly interested in the limelight and willing to sort of use their son as a tool to get the connections they were looking for. That led to all sorts of stuff and allegations galore that were in this HBO two-parter called Leaving Neverland. In the wake of that, people started to think about Michael Jackson differently. For instance, I heard people talking about, hey, did your opinion of his music change afterwards? Like, because it's damning. I watched it and I thought immediately, like, wow, this is terrible. I'm thinking differently about Michael Jackson. People started to question the lyrics in his songs. What's he talking about? Is Man in the Mirror? This was a real discussion. Is Man in the Mirror about Michael Jackson chastising himself for his feelings for young boys? What is it? What is all this truly about? And did Michael Jackson do it? That becomes the big question, and a question that he can't really honestly defend himself from. And one of the features of the News Junkie Interviews that we start every show out with is Coleman's Questions. And that's when our friend Coleman goes to the streets and asks the important questions about the topic at hand in this interview. This one being, is Michael Jackson innocent? What are people's thoughts on this? Let's go to the tape.
Does any of this change whether or not you'll listen to his music?
I feel that, like, you have to accept that he fucked up. If you acknowledge that he fucked up and understand that it's wrong, he still left something beautiful that changed the world. He left his mark for eons to come. Now, unfortunately, it's going to have an asterisk.
On a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being completely guilty, 1 being completely innocent, what are your thoughts on the Michael Jackson abuse claims?
I would like to think he's innocent, but I know he's broken inside based on his childhood. So I would say he's pretty guilty.
1 to 100, sir.
100 being the most guilty?
100 guilty.
Yeah, definitely like 85.
Does any of this change whether or not you'll listen to his music?
No. The musician's personality is totally separate from how they are as musicians. I usually retract the Guns N' Roses for that. Axl Rose, total douchebag. Guns N' Roses music, pretty good.
On a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being completely guilty, 1 being completely innocent, what are your thoughts on the Michael Jackson abuse claims?
I honestly don't know, because I haven't looked into it enough, like with my own research, to see all that's happened with it. But they did do that one segment on Scary Movie 4 where he tried to snatch up the little kid. So, I mean, maybe like 25%, I'll say. That's the only research I've done on the subject.
Okay, so based on Scary Movie 4, on a scale of 1 to 100, you're giving this a 25. Okay. Does any of this change whether or not you'll listen to his music?
I don't listen to his music.
So that's a no. You don't
Exactly.
before and you won't after.
Yeah.
Does any of this change whether or not you're going to listen to his music?
Honestly, his dance moves are what I appreciated the most. The singing, I always thought he wasn't that great of a singer. I don't know, man. I don't care for it. It's whatever.
It's whatever, he says. But most people have a very strong opinion. Did Michael Jackson do this? Is he guilty? And if he is, well, rightfully so, even in death, we should separate ourselves from him. To be such a monster of a human being, to sexually assault, to rape children, is enough to get rid of the great things that you may have done. Though it is another debate altogether whether or not you can appreciate somebody's art away from them and their personality. Now, I think you can take the artist and attack them in a whole different way. And then even if you think that they're terrible human beings, still enjoy the products that they made. But how does everybody else feel about this? And that's a big question out there. And then I saw a rebuttal to this whole thing. Now, the mainstream media at large has totally ignored the reaction from Michael Jackson fans. These people are hardcore, and they've been fighting this fight since way before we ever heard about Leaving Neverland. These people online across Twitter and different social media platforms have been defending the King of Pop for as long as many of them can remember. And they started to come together and put together things like this Rebuttal documentary, which is coming up on 1 million views on YouTube. A guy named Liam McEwen who did this. He did a documentary you can find. It's short, but it's pretty interesting, I think. Neverland Firsthand, investigating the Michael Jackson documentary. That's on YouTube for free. There's a lot of other people who have created these rebuttal videos where they describe what's going on here. And I thought, we need to figure out more about this. Let's dive in. Let's learn more about these people that they call the Michael Jackson truthers. I interviewed the guy who put together this Neverland Firsthand rebuttal documentary, Liam McEwen, but the interview was marred by a lot of sounds of mowing in the back and other things. And I think there's something more important we should focus on. But I did ask him that same question about Michael Jackson that Coleman had in his questions this week. Is he guilty? 100's guilty.
Look, we can't say... Obviously, we can't say for sure. I'm going to say 5 to 10. And I'll tell you why. The only little parts of guilt that I personally believe he had was what we were speaking about. You know, he was naive to how people saw his actions. Yes, some of the actions he did were questionable, but criminal, I don't think so.
There he is. That's the guy who put together this rebuttal documentary, Liam McEwen. Look it up, Neverland Firsthand, if you want to check it out. But there are people, as I said, they call Michael Jackson truthers, and they're not that crazy. And this first episode of the News Junkie interviews is going to be focused around my conversations with one of those Michael Jackson truthers. Can he convince you to believe differently than you may already believe? Is Michael Jackson innocent? That's the big question, and that's what I wanted to get down to the bottom of. You can hear me okay, right?
Right.
All right, let's start out just kind of getting into this a little bit. Now that this whole reaction to the Leaving Neverland thing is getting traction, there's a lot of people who are referring to you and the group of folks who are defending Michael Jackson as Michael Jackson truthers, and they're using all kinds of other kind of derogatory lingo to refer to you. How do you take that as that's starting to happen?
It's par for the course. We're used to it by now. I mean, I've always said that anyone who researches the facts, whether they're a fan or not, will know that he was innocent. And the fans, we generally defend Michael based on the facts. And the facts are easily available, easily researchable. They're in the public domain. So there's no reason for anyone, especially in journalism and the media, to make those derogatory statements about fans, because for the most part, we're very level-headed and fact-based, and we make our arguments with logically and rationally. So I don't know why anyone could reasonably refer to fans as truthers. It's just ridiculous.
But you're hearing that, right?
Yeah.
So your name's David. You're at
Correct.
Sane MJ Fan on Twitter. Where do you live?
Houston.
You live in Houston? Do you mind saying what you do? I mean, you don't have to say who you work for. I just want to know.
I work in accounting for the oil and gas industry.
Okay, and you've been just a fan of Michael Jackson for a really long time?
Yeah, I was a casual fan growing up. I knew his greatest hits, but I didn't closely follow his life or career or anything. And during the trial, I was a full-time graduate student in college, so I didn't keep up with it at all. And after the trial, I didn't keep up with Michael. And, when he died, I was very sad, and I definitely missed him, and it made me really reflect on his life. But initially when he died, I almost forgot that he was on trial for the molestation allegations. And something I started researching after he died, just to really see what really happened. Was he really innocent or guilty? And after researching the facts, I realized he really was innocent. And, I started connecting with other fans and reading fan websites and fan blogs, reading books that are written about Michael by various journalists and legal analysts. And the more I researched him, the more just enhanced I became by him, and just the media, the way they covered him, and the way it was just so inaccurate in the coverage of him. And it's like I was very disappointed in the media for perpetuating and legitimizing these false accusations. So over the years, it's become a hobby of mine just to communicate with other fans, and eventually I joined Twitter and became active in the online MJ fan community. And ever since January, when his so-called documentary was announced, it's just been the amount of activity has really increased exponentially in the fan community. For so many fans, especially fans who are inactive and came back because they were just shocked and upset that this documentary was being aired. And as far as fans being attacked, unfortunately, we've been attacked for decades, and it's just really sad that this was come down to.
Do you know any of these other Michael Jackson fans in I guess real life, or do you just communicate with them online?
Yeah, mostly online, but a few I know in real life. So a few I've met in real life, and there are lots of fan clubs all over the country and all over the world, and lots of places and ways for fans to communicate with each other both in real life and online.
All right, so let's get into what we're here about, I guess. You think that Michael Jackson is innocent?
Right.
Let's just say 1 out of 100. If 100 is completely guilty, you think he's a 0?
Yeah, 0, completely innocent.
Of all these charges and all these different cases, look, I'm going to defer to you here because you definitely have researched this pretty in depth. How many total accusers were there in Michael Jackson's lifetime against him?
Okay, in life there were 3,
Mm-hmm.
and then posthumously these 2 accusers.
In the documentary?
Reed Robinson and James Sachuk. And in life, the first one was Jordan Chandler in 1993. He was the son of the movie dentist who tried to get into Hollywood through Michael. The second one was the child of a former Neverland employee who was fired for theft. His name was Jason Francia. He testified against Michael in the trial and was discredited. The third accused was Gavin Arvizo. He was a 13-year-old cancer kid who visited Neverland, participated in the documentary Living with Michael Jackson and Martin Bashir, falsely accused Michael afterwards, and testified against Michael during that trial and was also discredited.
All right, and then you had this drop of this all of a sudden out of nowhere documentary from HBO, and they say, look, we've got these two accusers. But for me, I knew Wade Robson. I knew of him from some pop culture stuff. I had never heard of James Safechuck. I'm taking it that when this documentary came out, you already were well aware who these people were.
Exactly, because the fans, we've been closely following the lawsuits since they were filed in 2013. Wade filed his lawsuit in May 2013. Safechuck filed his in May 2014. So we've been actively following all the cases, all the legal documents, all the motions, which are all publicly available. We're very happy and pleased when they were both thrown out of court in 2017. And we truly thought that would be the end of it. And then lo and behold, to our shock, in January they announced the so-called documentary, and it just really sunk a hole in our hearts, because anyone who did even slightest amount of research would know their stories are complete nonsense. There's no credibility whatsoever to them. Why are they being legitimized and given a platform to continue to lie? And it's clearly driven by money and profit and ratings by both HBO and the director, Dan Reed.
So Dan Reed, let's start with him. I think that makes the most sense. He's the person who directed this Leaving Neverland documentary. They have Wade Robson on there, who was a dancer who met Michael Jackson when he was very young. There's no denying that they knew each other. I don't think you're trying to say that they didn't. Of course not. Right. Then James Safechuck, and James Safechuck met Michael Jackson when they were working on a television commercial.
Correct, for Pepsi.
And then there was a relationship back and forth where he was very friendly with their family. And these two show up on Leaving Neverland. But as far as the director who's highlighted both their stories, what's his agenda? Okay, if this is a bunch of bullshit and they're not telling the truth, and we'll get deeper into that in a moment, but what's the director's motivation, do you think?
Okay, in the recent interview, the director said that in 2016, he and the partner would come up with ideas for the next documentary, and they wanted to do a documentary on something like an unsolved mystery or something involving someone very high profile, like a celebrity. So his partner suggested, why not do a documentary on these two men accusing Michael Jackson posthumously of child abuse? So he agreed to it, and then Dan Reed reached out to the attorneys representing Safechuck and Wade, met with them, met with Safechuck and Wade in person. They agreed to do it, and this was in 2016. So the initial plan was to have like a short, like 45-minute, 1 hour documentary on both of them.
So they threw that out the window then, because this was 2 parts at like 2 hours apiece. It was like a total of 4 hours, not 45 minutes.
Yeah, and the reason expanded from 1 hour to 4 hours because it was planned before the Me Too movement. And Dan Reed specifically said after the Me Too movement blew up in the fall of 2016, he decided to expand it to capitalize on it.
Really?
And he initially started shopping it to different various networks, and he met with HBO, showed them the original footage that he had, and HBO was ecstatic. They agreed to finance it and continue it. They wanted to expand it even further to involve the families and get into more detail. And that's how it grew from 1 hour to 4 hours. And HBO was down with it from the very beginning once they were approached by Dan Reed. And so they have a financial incentive to defend the documentary at all costs because they financed it. They thought it would be a huge hit, and it really wasn't. But unfortunately, regardless of the ratings, the damage to Jackson's brand and reputation is just irreparable, and the damage is done.
So you say like it wasn't a huge hit. Where I actually didn't even see the breakout ratings on it. Did not a lot of people end up watching it, all told?
No, it didn't. It certainly didn't break the records that HBO thought it would.
Yeah,
they did get a lot of ratings, but
so David, you're saying like you got Michael Jackson, you've got these two accusers. They thought this thing was going to go gangbusters.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go to the not the documentary, but actually afterwards they had this other special that they did on HBO, and it was hosted by Oprah Winfrey. Yeah. And she kind of sat down with the two accusers, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, and she asked a question that I think is important, and then I want to get your response to it afterwards, which is, why did you deny the abuse so many times before this? So hold on, let's listen in.
Why, when your mother asked you in 1993, the first trial, why did you do the same thing that Anthony did and so many other people have done. Why did you deny it? Because that felt like a great opportunity to say, well, yeah, some of the same things have happened to me.
I did not testify out of thinking I was doing something good or knowing that what he did was bad. I was afraid of being caught. It was on the news 24/7. I mean, it was just being broadcast, and there was so much attention on it from the world.
So by that time, you thought of what you were doing as a bad thing, or just as a thing that you all did, but you had to keep it a secret?
I didn't think of it as good or bad. It was that old sort of wiring of, if you're caught, your life will be over.
So he's trying to say all these times that I could have said something, and that was James Safechuck, the guy who was in this commercial with Michael Jackson. And he's saying, I had all these moments to do it, but I didn't do it because I thought I was going to get in trouble and Michael Jackson was going to get in trouble. Your reaction to that?
Total lies. When Wade and James defended Michael in the 90s, they were telling the truth. And don't just look at the words, look at their actions. Not only did they defend them verbally in public, but also in private, in court, in official court documents. Wade actually testified for Michael. I believe the Safechucks may have testified in 1994 at grand jury proceedings, but I'm not sure about that. But they did meet with investigators and defend Michael.
And when Wade, when he testified as a character witness for Michael Jackson, it wasn't like he was a little kid anymore, right? He was grown ass man.
Yeah, 2005, I believe he was 23 or 24 years old. And
all right, so hold on.
Testified.
No, go ahead. Finish your point. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the reason he testified it wasn't just to defend Michael as a character witness, to say how nice of a person he was. He called to testify specifically to rebut the testimony of a previous prosecution witness who's a former employee of Neverland who lied and said that he saw Michael molesting various kids in the early 90s, including Wade. This was a lie that he sold to tabloids in 1993 after the Chandler accusation went public. Because during that time, there was a bounty that tabloids were paying to anyone who had negative stories about Michael. And tabloids were interviewing former employees, former associates of Michael, and anything to get dirt to make these salacious headlines and sell papers. And so the prosecution, they brought in some of these former employees to testify for them that said that they saw Michael accusing kids. Of course, they did not ask the kids were they abused, because they know that they would deny it. But nevertheless, they called these witnesses anyway to testify. So as a result, the defense called in Wade Robinson, Macaulay Culkin, and another kid
who all
testify.
Who all said that nobody had, Michael Jackson had not touched them, is what they said.
Correct, and it's important that with Wade Robinson, his story is based on two mutually exclusive concepts. One, he was abused, and he knew he was abused, but he did not know it was illegal or wrong. But yet he denied it because he didn't want to go to jail. He wanted Michael to go to jail, and they're mutually exclusive because you can't say at the same time that you didn't know it was abuse, but deny it anyway. And when he was on the stand, he was asked specifically, did Michael do this and do that? He wasn't asked, do you think abuse is wrong? He said, the prosecution specifically said, did Michael touch you? Did Michael fondle you? Did Michael perform any sexual acts? Did Michael give you alcohol? Did Michael force you to sleep in his bed? Or anything ridiculous? And Wade denied everything because he was telling the truth.
All right, now let's tackle these one by one, because I think this will be the easiest for everybody to follow and kind of make sense of. Let's start with Wade Robson. He seems to be sort of the main figure. He was the one who came out first before James Safechuck and said that Michael Jackson had done this stuff to him since he was a young kid. In fact, the series starts very dramatically with him saying, Michael Jackson did this for me, he did this for me, he did this for me, and he also sexually abused me since I was a young child. So we'll start with Wade Robson. What's Wade Robson's motivation? If he's lying, is he doing this because he wants money? I thought he was successful. He was like a big-time choreographer. He had a lot of big stuff going on. Is that not the case?
Well, he was successful in the late 90s and early 2000s, but he burned a lot of bridges, primarily when he broke up Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears. Because at the time, he was actually dating Brandy Jackson, which is Michael's nephew and daughter of Jackie Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
They were dating together. Wade cheated on her with Britney Spears. Eventually, Britney and Justin broke up, and then Britney started dating Wade for a little while. But that cost him a lot of trust in the industry, so he definitely lost a lot of clout and power in the industry. He did have his own TV show in 2003 that ran for one season. He continued to choreograph, but over the years, his amount of work and influence declined. And in 2011, he applied for a role with Michael Jackson Estate to be the lead choreographer and director of the Michael Jackson 1 show, which is created by Cirque du Soleil.
Okay, yeah, so this was going to be a big deal. He was going to push forward his dancing and choreography career by being the lead in this Michael Jackson Cirque show. Or I'm sorry, the choreographer for all the dancing that would be in that Cirque show.
Yeah, as a director, he would be in charge of basically creating the show from scratch and creating the routines and creating the set list and etc. So he'd be the main guy in charge. It's a very big deal, it's a lot of responsibility, and it definitely would have put his career back on the right track had he gotten that job, but he wasn't. He was passed over for someone else. And shortly after this, he had a nervous breakdown. He was very depressed. Work wasn't coming in. He had financial problems, marital problems as well. His wife was threatening to leave. So he started going to counseling and therapy the following year, 2012. And during these counseling sessions, that's when he claims that he disclosed for the first time that he was abused, and he realized that the abuse was wrong. So this was in May 2012, I believe.
All right, so he says when he sits down and he talks to this therapist, it comes to him that he's going to reveal that this happened to him. Did they do, because I've heard some stuff like there was some hypnosis or whatever, or did he just come out with this story?
He just came out with it.
All right, so he starts finally, this therapist is the first person he's told in his entire life, I'm guessing, about this relationship with Michael Jackson. Where does it go from there? Did he go from there to the documentary?
No, actually, later in late 2012, early 2013, he started shopping a book deal to various publishers. He hired a publicist, and he wrote a draft, and he sent it to several publishers. All of them rejected the book deal. They would not offer him a book deal to release his book.
Why do you think that was? Do you think they were scared of getting sued because he's going to be claiming that Michael Jackson sexually abused him in this book? Because I would think, man, but book publisher, this guy's coming in, he's going to write a book saying Michael Jackson diddled him. We're going to sell some copies here, but nobody wanted it?
Nobody wanted it. Personally, I believe, and many fans believe, is that none of the publishers believe the story because his story is just so incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you praised Jackson for 20 years, not just in words, but in actions. As I said, you tried to try out to be a director of his tribute show. You actually participated in his tribute with his sister Janet at the MTV Awards in September 2009. You wrote a great tribute for him in his book. The Michael Jackson Opus book was a tribute to his career. You went to his funeral. You defended him, testified in trial. And now you're saying that in the year 2013, when you're 33 years old, now you realize that you were abused and it was wrong. But the whole time you were defending him, it was okay. You didn't know it was wrong. How much? You defended him and denied it.
How much did Wade Robson sue the Michael Jackson estate for?
There wasn't a monetary amount attached, including with the lawsuit, but we assume that had he won, he would have requested anywhere from tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay. I want to hear something here because this is Wade Robson himself talking again on that follow-up show that Oprah Winfrey had after Leaving Neverland. So here he is.
One of the interesting things about Michael and his particular situation is that the grooming had started long before we ever met him. Because he was who he was. He was such a massive figure and represented himself as such an angel. And I didn't have a childhood, and I love children so much. That's why I love being around children. I want to help other children have a childhood. So long before ever meeting him the first time, so much had been set up already that I was, and I think my mother, my whole family was already surrendered before we met him.
What's your reaction to that, David?
So a lie. I mean, Jackson did not groom anyone. They were infatuated with him. The Wade Robinson family and his family, they're the ones that tried to meet him. They're the ones who tracked Jackson down and keep in touch. They're the ones that took the initiative to visit him and write letters and etc. They're the ones that tried to use Jackson to get put on to get a career. So the idea that Jackson groomed them from afar before he met them is just so ridiculous.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that a little bit, because it seemed to me, even watching Leaving Neverland, that to suggest that these families, the mothers, like these kind of stage mothers of Wade Robson and James Safechuck in particular, weren't actively pursuing this, like they weren't eating it up, is a little bit crazy and out of touch with the facts.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, that's one of the main reasons why the lawsuits were thrown out, because obviously since Jackson's dead, you can't sue Jackson. So what Wade did was he sued Jackson's companies, I think MJJ Ventures and MJJ Productions, I believe, by saying that they were facilitators of his abuse by reaching out to Wade and inviting Wade on Michael's behalf and flying him out to Neverland to meet with Michael, etc.
Oh, okay.
That was part of his story, his lawsuit. But it was contradicted by facts that this irrefutable evidence showing that they reached out to Michael. They're the ones that pursued the relationship with Michael. So that's part of the reason why the judge threw out their case, because he could not hold Michael's companies responsible as so-called facilitators of abuse when the Robson family were the ones that facilitated the interactions with Jackson. For example, the very first time they met was in 1987. Wade Robinson won a Michael Jackson dance contest in Australia. That's when they met Jackson for the first time as a winner. And he tried to say that Jackson and his companies were facilitators of that particular contest, but in fact, it was actually Target and Pepsi, the sponsors of the Bad Tour. They're the ones that created the dance event and the meet and greet. So that was part of the lawsuit. It's just part of the reason why his lawsuit was failed, because he couldn't prove that. In fact, no, actually, the facts prove that Jackson's companies were not facilitators of anything.
So I want to move on first in just a moment to James Safechuck and tackle that side of it, and then on to all these sort of myths or at least viral stories about Michael Jackson that people kind of sort of know, but maybe you could dispel those, like about his penis and the child identifying him. And we'll get to all that in a second. But and I hate to even do this, because I know that they call this whole group the Michael Jackson Truthers, and in fact, you sit there and combat a lot of misinformation all day long. So you have coherent arguments that I've heard for all this stuff. But let's just say you're talking to somebody at the bar and you're sitting there and we're focused on Wade Robson still. And they go, what are the three things that make you believe that Wade Robson is lying about these accusations? What do you say to that person? What are the three things that, with Wade Robson in particular, you're like, he's lying in these Leaving Neverland claims?
I'll say first, look at his actions throughout the years. You defended Jackson publicly and privately. You actively praised him. You actively tried to be around him throughout all your adult life. You mourned him after he died. You tried to work as a director as his tribute show. So basically, you have to look at his actions. Are his actions consistent with a child abuse victim? How many child abuse victims praised their abuser? How many child abuse victims try to get married at the place they were abused at? It recently came out by Jackson's nanny that during 2005, during a trial, Wade Robinson requested to get married at Neverland. And then that request was denied. And later that summer, I believe August 2005, after the trial was ended, Wade was married. He actually invited Michael to his wedding. Of course, Jackson declined because he didn't want to be a distraction. But how many child abuse victims invite their abuser to their wedding?
Yeah.
All right. I'll also say, look at the the evidence that was obtained during the discovery process during litigation.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about
that.
that. So your second point would be this: some of the stuff that was obtained from Wade Robson when they had discovery and they were able to, during this lawsuit, look into Wade Robson stuff, like the stuff they found on his computer, right?
Yeah, emails. He was emailing himself tabloid stories about Jackson, so-called abusing him. And one particular story was a former Neverland employee who lied to a tabloid about Jackson abusing Wade Robinson in the early 90s. He emailed himself that story, forwarded the email to his mother, and said, Mom, is this true? His mom replied, no, none of this is true. Not just the abuse, but the circumstances of the abuse, so the where and when, etc. His mom replied and said, none of it is true. Nevertheless, that entire passage was included in his lawsuit word for word. He was literally copying and pasting from the internet to help build his case for his lawsuit.
Okay, so you're saying his case very closely mirrors this thing he was looking at, and he was definitely reading in his emails.
Yeah.
What about third? What would the third thing be?
I would say another. Okay, he said that the foundation of his the motivation for his lawsuit is that he wants to be an advocate for victims, help give them a voice. He's trying to make himself out to be this public advocate for all the silent victims out there. But the reality is that when he filed the lawsuit in May 2013, he initially filed it under seal, hoping to get a confidential settlement that would never be disclosed to the public.
Huh.
Now, had the estate paid that settlement for his lawsuit, no one would ever know. But because they refused to pay, and they said they refused to be extorted, that's when it went public. So if he was really trying to be an advocate, then why did he file a lawsuit under seal?
Yeah, and what was it about Wade Robson, this little piece that I keep hearing where the whole storyline about him being on the train at Neverland just doesn't match up?
Actually, it's Safechuck.
Okay, so that's perfect time then to move on to James Safechuck, the other accuser. Is that one of the three things that you think kind of that tips you off that you don't believe his story?
Yeah, with Safechuck, one of the motivation, he filed his lawsuit in May 2014. But I believe March, April of 2014, his family was sued for around $800,000. So that right there is a motivation to join in with his own copycat lawsuit. So that's his family motivation right there.
His family was about to be in a lawsuit where they were going to owe almost $1 million. So you're thinking, hey, they go, where are we going to come up with this money?
Exactly.
All right. So now tell me about the train thing, then.
Okay, I'll get to that in a second. But another thing with Wade is that, with Safechuck, it's his story. He gave two different versions of when he first disclosed his so-called abuse. In the lawsuit, he said that he didn't realize he was abused until he saw Wade Robinson on the Today Show in May 2013. However, in the documentary and in an open interview, he said he first disclosed his abuse in 2005 when Michael was on trial. He called him, asked him to testify, and he told Michael no, he refused to do so. And he told his mom then for the first time that he refused to testify and that Michael had abused him. And that's why his mom said in 2009 she danced when she found out Michael died. But so that's not a minor discrepancy. That's an 8-year gap. When did he realize that he was abused? Was it 2005 to 2013? So that's number two. Number three is this train station. This is by far the biggest smoking gun. He said that from 1988 to 1992, he said specifically, Michael Jackson took me to his train station at Neverland. He abused me there multiple times throughout that 4-year period.
He gave the dates, he gave the years, he was specific about that.
Correct. It wasn't an issue of memory recall or struggling to remember. He was very specific and very detailed with his accusations. Legal documents came out from the city of Santa Barbara by some fans who are very good at investigating. The construction on that train station did not begin until September 1993, a full year after he claimed in his lawsuit the abuse stopped at that train station. It wasn't even completed until mid-1994. I think July, August of 1994, I believe. So it wasn't completed until 2 years after he says the abuse stopped.
And that's a pretty particular detail that he's remembering.
It proves that he's lying because it shows that he was obviously looking at photos at Neverland, trying to make up areas of where he was allegedly abused. He saw a train station. He said, "Oh, I'll just say that I was molested there." He thought he'd get away with it. That's what happened.
What about people who say, but the stuff that they said was like embarrassing and in detail, and that you think money would still be the driving force?
Yes, absolutely. And the reason it was so graphic and so shocking and so salacious is because all they have is their word. There's no corroborating evidence. All they have is a word. And the more graphic, the more disgusting they make it sound, the more believable it is. Because to the general public, who isn't knowledgeable about Jackson at all, is very gullible, very susceptible to believe in lies, they're going to think to themselves, these two grown men are putting their reputations online, going out in public to make these accusations, get the world's biggest pop star. They must be telling the truth, because no grown man would want to put himself out there
Sure.
as a child abuse video.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I reacted. When I watched this, I go, wow, that's intense what he's saying right now, from talking about Michael Jackson's penis in his mouth and really detailed stuff. I'm going, why would an individual, and I think that's how a lot of people react. Why would an individual say this and put themselves out there like this if it didn't happen? But sort of what I'm getting from you is that this is the perfect shield to hide behind.
Exactly.
And so to wrap that portion up, Wade Robson, James Safechuck, the basis of the claims in Leaving Neverland that have been so explosive, you don't believe them at all?
No. Every element of this story has been discredited. From the foundation of the stories, when they first disclosed the abuse, to the places, everything is discredited. They have no credibility whatsoever.
So you have dismissed the first three claims that we talked about, then Wade Robson and James Safechuck, the basis for Leaving Neverland. Now there's some things out there that I'm sure you have to interact with from time to time, just those things that are viral that catch on and that people start to believe. One of them being something you mentioned earlier, and that's obviously huge star Macaulay Culkin. And I even remember looking at some of the deposition video Michael Jackson did where they asked him about that. Let me play that real quick.
Do you know a person by the name of Macaulay Culkin?
Yeah. No. Get your answer.
So you're going to let him answer questions about Macaulay Culkin?
Let him answer that one.
To your knowledge, were you ever accused of having sexually molested Macaulay?
That's an instruction not to answer on that one.
That's Michael Jackson's reaction to that. And this was a very contentious deposition back and forth between Michael Jackson's attorneys and another attorney who was asking him about all these different accusers and have you been accused of sexually molesting them? And you just see Michael Jackson almost apoplectic in his response to that. That's one thing that gets thrown out there. And in fact, I want to, I'll get your full take on this in just a second, but I want to add this piece to it because I did think it was a little messed up that in Leaving Neverland, they start to talk about these other kids and they kind of talk about Macaulay Culkin and they talk about some others and they almost lean into that by going, hey, they totally got molested too. They just don't want to admit to you that this happened, which is kind of screwed up. But about the Macaulay Culkin stuff and your reaction to that, what do you think?
So Macaulay Culkin, he's been a great defender and advocate of Jackson for since the early '90s, and it's a shame that people to this day still think that he was molested despite his constant denials.
Yeah, he still says no, right?
Yeah, he still says and denies it. In fact, he doesn't even dignify it with a response anymore. He quit responding years ago. His testimony during trial was tremendous. It was one of the reasons why Jackson was rightfully acquitted. And the fact that Leaving Neverland insinuates that Macaulay Culkin and Brett Barnes were both molested is a sign of the lack of journalistic integrity by Dan Reed. Because his excuse is that he included a statement saying that they've always denied abuse. But if he had integrity, he wouldn't just include a statement. He would have interviewed them on camera in detail, the same detail he interviewed Wade and Safechuck.
Yeah.
Give them a chance to enthusiastically and emphatically deny it in detail.
Well, and I don't
not just
know.
a little statement.
I don't know that they may not have wanted to participate in this, but regardless, the idea that you're bringing them up, and even if you say they deny these allegations, you showing them and bringing them up and making them part of the story, it's telling a different tale. It's kind of like, hey, look, these two guys say they got molested, and these other two kids used to hang out with the same guy all the time. What do you think happened there? So yeah. I did think that was kind of screwy the way the director set all that up. So let's see some of the other things. So there's been a long-held thing that maybe you can clear up, that there was some accuser who was able to identify what Michael Jackson's penis looked like, which I remember years and years ago, I said to myself, boy, that's kind of a convincing piece of information. If the kid knows what his penis looks like, why does a kid know what Michael Jackson's penis looks like? What was the real story from your perspective on that?
That is a lie. That kid who made that accusation was Jordan Chandler. For the first one from 1993. His father, Evan Chandler, was a dentist. The family met the Jackson by sheer coincidence. They got very close to Jackson. They traveled with him, invited Jackson to their home, and Jackson spent time there. Evan Chandler, he was dentist, and he was trying to make his mark in Hollywood. And in fact, he wrote the screenplay for the movie Robin Hood Men in Tights, which was released in 1993.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And that was the parody of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah, I remember that movie.
Sorry. Yeah, so anyway, after the success of Robin Hood Men in Tights, he wanted to leave dentistry and go into Hollywood full time. He thought Jackson would be his meal ticket. He wanted to partner with Jackson on the film distribution company. And Jackson refused and just stopped talking to him. Didn't want anything more to do with him. And then that's what really upset Evan Chandler. So, long story short, he concocted this idea to falsely accuse Jackson of accusing his son. He lost custody of his son in August 1993.
Really?
The courts ordered him to return custody to his ex-wife, June. So the following day, instead of handing over Jordan to June, he said took Jordan to a psychiatrist, had him lie to a psychiatrist and say that he was abused by Jackson. Psychiatrist was forced to notify police as a mandatory reporter
because of the way the laws work. If a psychiatrist is told by this young kid, he has to report it.
Correct.
So you think this was all done to lead to the next steps?
Yes. In fact, he wrote a book about how and why he created these. How he made up the story.
Oh, he admitted to it.
It's really incredible.
Wait. So Jordan Chandler, the one who said he knew what Michael Jackson's penis looked like, he admitted that he was not telling the truth?
No. Well, what happened was in the fall of 1993, after the police investigation started, the Chandler family, they filed a $40 million lawsuit against Jackson, and then they filed a motion with the court to have the civil trial precede the criminal trial. Because normally in a case like this, the criminal trial would go first, and after the criminal trial is over with, then the civil trial goes afterwards. You sue for money. So the judge ruled in Chandler's favor.
But did he know what Michael Jackson's penis looked like?
No, that's a lie. I guess that's a lie.
Okay.
He told police that he could give a description of Jackson's penis. His description was completely wrong because he said that Jackson's penis was circumcised when in fact he was not circumcised. And Jackson's autopsy report confirmed that. And number two, he said that Jackson had a light splotch on his penis that was surrounded by dark pigment. But the reality is that it was opposite. He had a dark splotch on his penis surrounded by a lightened skin because he had the skin disease vitiligo. His entire body was mostly light from depigmented skin with little splotches here and there from areas of skin that weren't depigmented.
So he had it all
like
wrong.
A cow almost.
Yeah.
But it's a very despicable allegation because he said that Jackson forced him to forced Jordan to masturbate him and to perform oral sex on him and do other disgusting sexual acts that would involve Jordan touching his penis. But despite the fact that Jordan's description was completely wrong proves that he was lying. He tried to make a lucky guess, and his guess failed. So when you think about it, you're either circumcised or you're not circumcised.
Yeah.
There's a 50-50 chance that you'll get it right. So if you're saying that you saw someone's penis, not only saw it, but you felt it, you masturbated and performed all sex on his penis, yet your description is completely wrong whether it was circumcised or not, that proves that you're lying. Same thing with the splotch. I mean, he says that the splotch that Jackson had is the complete opposite of the splotch that Jordan says he saw.
Yeah, he's just taking a shot in the dark.
And this is where logic comes in, because people say that Jordan's description was accurate, but if it was accurate, why wasn't Jackson arrested immediately upon a strip search? Because the police that used that description to get a search warrant on Jackson's body, photograph him nude, and to see if the photographs of Jackson's penis matched Jordan's description. So he went into Neverland in December 1993, did a strip search, walked right out without Jackson. So clearly the description did not match.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's
something
interesting.
people don't think about.
So before I get into my 2 cents on this, and I think you know already where I'm coming from on some of the things that I take issue with, but one thing that I think is worth noting that I think is a really solid point from your side and the folks who are still defending Michael Jackson in the wake of this Leaving Neverland thing is the media in their handling of this lacks any and all skepticism because of the nature and the weight of the charges. And do you think that the media is scared to question this, or even for that matter, report on the inconsistencies that are coming up, like the situation with Wade Robson and the train? Why is the media so against Michael Jackson in the coverage?
I think because it's very profitable for the media to write negative stories about Michael. They've been doing this since the Thriller era. After Thriller became the #1 album, and when Jackson bought the Beatles catalog, ever since then, the mainstream media has really been hard on Michael, writing a lot of negative stories. And then once these allegations came in 1993, it's just been it's like the train really left the station. It's been out of control. As far as the media now, I think a lot of it has to do with Me Too. It's like
they're scared.
Blasphemy, the question and accusing nowadays, and it shouldn't be that way. You should scrutinize all allegations. If the allegations withstand scrutiny, then you believe them. But they didn't even try to scrutinize these bogus allegations. A lot of it is Jackson. His name drives ratings, drives clicks, drives revenues. And the general public is more interested in the story if they're being told Mike Jackson's guilty. If they're told that he's innocent, these accusations are bogus, people are going to lose interest in the story and not click the articles, not read the articles, etc., and they'll make as much money.
All right. So I have two major issues with this, and I'm going to throw those out as we wrap things up here, David. And again, you could follow David on Twitter, and you could see he's got one of the bigger accounts, thousands and thousands of followers, and many, many other people that he interacts with on a daily basis, just fighting off all of this, what they see as misinformation about Michael Jackson, a man they think is innocent after a documentary that most people just watched and said, totally guilty. But there was conversations like, do we still listen to the music? Should we, bands are saying, should we play covers anymore? All that's going on, and everybody's taking things that far, and the Michael Jackson fans are dug in deep online. He's at Sane MJ Fan, and you'll get a lot more of an explanation there. But let me get into my two main issues. Issue number one that I have is Michael Jackson was not a stupid person. He was a pretty intelligent individual to be able to put together the art and not only the art that he created, but I have also seen interviews with him where he seems pretty well put together. Why would somebody like Michael Jackson, who at some points in his life had multiple accusers who were coming forward saying this stuff and repeating, hey, we were sleeping in the bed with Michael Jackson, why would he still put himself in situations where even if he wasn't doing anything wrong, even if he just loved kids, even if he grew up differently, he knew that people were going to go, well, here's another kid he's sleeping with. And before I get your take, I want to bring you back with this. Here's Michael Jackson himself. We'll bring his voice into this, addressing this issue.
Why can't you share your bed? The most loving thing to do is to share your bed with someone.
Yes.
As we sit here today, do you still think that it's acceptable to share your bed with children?
Of course. Of course, why not? If you're going to be a pedophile, if you're going to be Jack the Ripper, if you're going to be a murderer, it's not a good idea. That I'm not. That's how we were raised. And I didn't sleep in the bed with the child. Even if I did, it's okay. I slept on the floor. I gave the bed to the child. Well, what's wrong with sharing your bed? I didn't say I slept in the bed. Even if I did sleep in the bed, it's okay. I am not going to do anything sexual to a child. It's not where my heart is. I would slit my wrist first. I would never do anything like that. That's not Michael Jackson. I'm sorry. That's someone else.
So that seems a little weak to me that you slept on the floor all the times these things happen. But take that on in a couple ways if you want to. But to the point mostly that why would he keep putting himself in the situation where he could be accused again of this stuff?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked it because it gives me an opportunity to dispel probably the main misconception people have of Michael is that when he says he shared beds, that he slept in the bed simultaneously with all these kids, and they're in bed spooning and cuddling, and it's only boys and girls and parents were banned, and the doors were locked, and no one was allowed, and everything was done in secret. All that is false. The only people that slept at Neverland overnight were his personal guests, usually his friends or family, people he trusted in his inner circle. And the guests generally slept in the guest units at Neverland. But occasionally, people would sleep in his two-story bedroom suite. Because his bedroom wasn't just a room. It was like the size of a duplex. It was 2 stories, massive, like 2 bathrooms. It was just huge, bigger than most apartments. And a lot of times, his guests would stay up late with Jackson, talking, watching movies, playing video games, etc. So obviously, Jackson didn't have a 9 to 5, so he didn't have to go to bed early, get up early in the morning, go to work. So it was very common for him and his guests to stay up late. Sometimes it was sleep in his bed, fall asleep in bed, and he would sleep upstairs or sleep on a sleeping bag on the floor. So that's what he said. That's what he meant when he said he shares his bed. He lets others sleep in his bed if they want to. Whenever the kids want to sleep in his bed, they have to get permission from the parents. Has been confirmed by multiple sources, including parents and employees who testified at the trial. As far as why he continued his practice after 1993, it's because he was innocent, and he felt that because he was innocent, he didn't have to change his behavior. And to an extent, I understand why, because look at the 2 accusers in 1993. The first accuser, Jordan Chandler, was the son of a disgruntled so-called friend who backstabbed him. The second accuser was the son
David,
of a former employee.
I mean, just on a simple standpoint, just for his own sake. I mean, you have to admit, like that, it would have been a better idea for him just to not do that.
Yeah, true. I agree with that. I mean, I don't necessarily, I agree with what you're saying, but I think that the main cause of the 2003 allegations was the fact that he did that documentary, Martin Bashir.
Yeah.
And Martin Bashir exploited that issue to make it look like he was a pedophile. I mean, after the family had a falling out with Jackson, they decided to falsely accuse Jackson and take advantage of those suspicions that had already been placed in the media by a documentary.
All right.
So yes, if Jackson had stopped that practice, letting his guests sleep in his the bedroom, it would have been a lot harder to accuse him. And it would have been a lot better for him in the court of public opinion. So
I think so.
I won't disagree with you on that.
And my final point as we wrap things up here with you, David, is with all the stuff that you're saying, and I see you and I see various other people, and you're using facts, you're linking to actual documents, you're not a bunch of lunatics, which is what people think when they go Michael Jackson truthers. You think 9/11 truthers, and that's what they're trying to do to demean you. Number one, and let me just put this in real quick. Are there any like celebrities? Are there people who are supporting your cause now, like that Michael Jackson is still innocent?
Yeah, there are a few celebrities that have been vocal and public about it. Mostly people who knew Jackson personally, like Diana Ross, Stephanie Mills, Chris Brown, a few other people. But one thing that unfortunately, a lot of celebrities, they know Jackson's innocent. The facts are out there, but they can't publicly say it because they feel it will hurt them due to the Me Too movement, due to the fact that it looked like they're trying to attack victims or victim shaming, etc. They feel it's better to just support him privately rather than publicly. It's just sad, but it's understandable.
So my final point there. why, with all the information that you have, with all the information that these other Michael Jackson truthers have, why, with all that real bona fide information out there, why is the Michael Jackson estate so goddamn bad at defending this man who can't defend himself now that he's dead?
That's like the $1 million question. And personally, I think they're winning in the court of law, but they're losing in the court of public opinion. They just have not been as proactive as they should have been.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should have done more interviews. They should have hired a PR firm to do a media blitz and just get the facts out there. I know the main attorney did one interview with Gayle King, CBS This Morning. That interview never aired for some reason, and I don't believe he did any other interviews, and this is very disappointing. They should be more vocal in the public because they're losing the court of public opinion.
All right. Thank you so much, David, for taking the time to explain some of this.
Thanks for having me.
I think it's a wild world, and I hope I hope somebody's able to get out there, because this is starting to get more attention and get that point across in front of more people. And hopefully this does something to help that. @SaneMJFan on Twitter. And David, good luck out there.
Thank you.
All right, man. Well, there you go. And honestly, I thought he was going to be weird as hell. I thought he was going to be crazy. This mega Michael Jackson fan who point by point can address any of the accusations by any people throughout the years. I think there's a total of 5, and you heard him kind of run through them there, but he can go in depth about everything. And he seemed pretty normal considering the circumstances. But it's such a tough topic to get into. When somebody says, hey, a grown-ass man did this to me, and you hear the incredibly intense descriptions of that in Leaving Neverland, it kind of maybe gives you an idea why the media outlets weren't too eager or haven't been too eager to explore the other side of this. And I think he had some good points. I think there needs to be more done here to see exactly what these two are saying and if it lines up with the truth. Otherwise, you tarnish a man's reputation that he worked his whole life for. But my points stand. I think Michael Jackson just shows you what a strange bird he was, that everybody on planet Earth was going, hey, man, why are you sleeping in bed with these kids? And after those accusations would go by, well, there he found himself right back in bed with one of those kids. So even if he wasn't doing something with these people, he was just exhibiting bizarre behavior. That's not a crime, but it didn't help him out at all. So tell me what you think, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. These shows will have more of a format and more of a unique feel as the weeks and shows go on. And as I said, not every week, but as often as I can, I'll release these and let everybody know with an alert in the app and a conversation on air about what the next topic is. And there are some doozies coming up in the next couple of shows for the News Junkie interviews. I hope you enjoy.
Listen or subscribe now. Search for the News Junkie interviews on iHeartRadio or on the podcast app of your choice.